G'day everyone, my name's Unter. I'm a professional Overwatch coach and a sponsored content creator for Nightmare. Today I'm going to be breaking down a little bit about how it was that Nightmare, a new kid on the block in North American OWCS, was able to take Toronto Defiant, the 4-time champions of OWCS, the undefeated team in North America, all the way to map 7 in a grand final. I'm going to start it out with Infected on the Orisa. I think that we're going to go through each POV in a different moment and talk about how it's possible that this team was able to go so far. I'm going to start out with Infected though, because I think Infected, in the very first fight, he gapped someone. He demonstrated a wealth of understanding on how to play this hero in this matchup, and someone, in contrast, he demonstrated a little bit of a lacking in that understanding. What we see here happening in this first fight, it's just standard poke up until now, but as soon as the point unlocks, you can see here that the unlock has happened. Both Genjis have come down to the point. Sugar-Free and Zera, they're just playing on opposite sides. They need to contest the point. They need to pressure the cap. If one Genji doesn't do this, then the other team will get the cap for free. But the difference is between the two Orisas, because someone, he can't get his eyes off the objective. He's obsessed with walking back down onto the point, going onto the low ground, trying to poke out Zera. But any Genji worth his salt, he's not going to get poked out in this situation. He's going to be able to maintain on the objective. So often the Genjis in this first fight, they will get wrapped up in a long fight on the objective, just dueling one another, but nobody really having a demonstrable lead, and it's the players on the high ground that are responsible for the outcome of this first fight. So we see here, Infected and someone right now. Infected has already done a little bit more damage than someone, but you're really going to see it start to change here. Someone, he keeps walking down this staircase, trying to fight the Genjis, trying to fight on the objective, and you can see it now. Someone, he's actually on the objective with Lenny, with Sugar-Free, with his Genji. So in contrast, they've got Infected here up on this high ground, pushing the lane up on the side. And this is really high value for Infected because he's able to corral everyone into a corner. He's able to block the enemy team's hit scan that little bit more. From his current position, he can shoot the hit scan, he can duck back and shoot the objective a little bit when it's required, but he just overall has an angle where he can do both. You can see that it's been nothing but headshots, and this damage gap has become enormous. Infected, he's 80% of his way to the Terror Surge. Someone is only 40%. And that difference comes from the fact that Infected, he's pushing this lane over here on the right-hand side where he can shoot the Cassidy, but he's also playing this high ground position where he can shoot point and shoot everyone in the choke. He has vision of everything. In order for someone to try and pressure the objective to get an angle on the other side of this pillar, he actually has to drop down to the low ground. He has to go somewhere where he can no longer pressure the top group at all. So Nightmare, they're doing significantly more damage in this neutral fight, and it's all because of where Infected chose to stage the fight. Now, we're just going to see Infected push up on this right-hand lane, matching Merit, and that's going to blow things wide open because Merit, he can't find the angle to get a kill, and he will go down first. Once you lose your first player in a fight like this, really high-level Overwatch, the chances that you actually win the fight are so low. To turn a 4 versus 5, very low chance. So Nightmare, I would say that they have essentially won the fight at this point. There's a chance that Toronto can turn it. They've got the Orbital Ray, but because CJ has his own Ray to match, 95% of the work is done now. Nightmare have won this first fight. We see the push continues. Vega and CJ, they make some, questionable judgments as both teams wind up investing the raise, but damage is done and Nightmare take the first fight. Now that we're done with this first Ray exchange and we're done with the colossal tank gap that is Infected versus someone on the Orisa, which is really an understanding gap on how this point plays and the fact that Infected took a better position, whereas someone got himself caught up on the low ground, we can look over to the next fight. And on the next fight, we're going to see a completely different flavor from the side of Nightmare. Because now we're looking at ult fights. We're not just talking about neutral fight positioning. We're talking about ult fights, ult combos, and when you choose to take that fight. Because when you fight in these matchups is so important. You can always play slow and charge up more ultimates, but the problem is when you do that, you enable the enemy team to do the same. You enable the enemy team to charge up their ultimates, and then the ult clash can be disastrous. So we'll see here Nightmare, they had Infected go outside, do a little bit of poking, but as soon as Admiral gets close to this rally, they are ready to go with it. They don't want Toronto to play slow. They don't want to allow RuPaul to charge up his own rally. They don't want someone to charge up that Terror Surge. They just want to get it done while they have this advantage. They have a very clear combo that they can use. They have the Surge Rally, and Surge Rally is an incredibly potent combo. Meanwhile, Toronto, they don't have a good combo yet. Until they have someone's ult online, until they have RuPaul's ult online, double DPS ult, there's no such thing as a High Noon Blade. This isn't a combo. We're not living in a fantasy world right now. So Nightmare, they recognize that they've got a combo, the enemy team does not, and they just go for it straight away. You can see from Admiral, I'll break down this play because, you know, you blink and you'll miss it. But they've gone for this Surge Rally combo right away. We can just skim over the fact that Zero decided to throw in his blade for cosmetic value as well. But let me show you here what happened with this Surge Rally. So Infected, he dumps all of his cooldowns really early. He pushes in really fast with the spin and goes straight for the enemy team's squishies. He let them in a little bit. He didn't play close on the choke because he actually wanted people to swing out into the danger zone, into somewhere where he can surge them and they can get pushed by his whole team and shot by his whole team. So he allows people out of the choke and then he closes that gap with the spin and he gets right on top of them for the surge. At the same time, Admiral on the Brigida, he bashes in. Bash is typically, in a matchup like this, preserved to save your life or to finish a kill. You would be bashing away from the enemy team's surge. You would be bashing away from danger. But instead, Admiral, he's going for the hyper-aggressive play. He bashes in, then he pops the rally, which resets his bash cooldown and allows him to go for a second round of aggression. And with that second round of aggression, he swings out in main. He uses the bash inside the surge. And I mean, this is the money shot. This is where we've got Merit, we've got RuPaul, both stunned up inside the Terror Surge of Infected. Again, we'll just skim over the fact that Zero, you know, he got a little bit excited and popped the blade as well, because this is just too much. It didn't actually contribute anything to the combo. But Nightmare, they've done God's work here in terms of playing to the situation. They've pulled Toronto in, and as soon as Toronto have taken that bait, as soon as they've walked forward, they've gone for a perfectly executed combo. The Surge and Blade both, the Surge and Rally, they both land, and Toronto, they're just blown away. There's no hope for them whatsoever. Making these videos isn't really a full-time job, but for the longest time, coaching Overwatch has been. If you want to experience some of my has-been coaching with the goal of one day being as good as Seeker or as nice as Rack Attack, you can check out my links in the description and book yourself a coaching session today. If paying to support the streamer isn't really your speed, you can watch my reviews for free on my coaching channel or live on Twitch, both in the description. Cheers. The problem with what we just witnessed is Nightmare, they over-altered, right? I said we were going to skim over Zero with the blade, but really, the fact that Zero popped his blade there is everything for the side of Nightmare. Because now Nightmare, they need to change things up. They need to do something different. Toronto is going to be coming back into this next fight with all the ults in the world. They're going to have 4 ults by the time the next fight breaks down. And Nightmare, all they're going to have to their name is Seeker's High Noon. And High Noon, I mean, this is a pretty weak ultimate in this mirror. This is something where there's so much danger to you all the time. You can get bashed out of it, you can get speared out of it, you can die standing still. There's just too much risk. So what Nightmare need to do, they can't play slow and charge up their ultimates. There simply isn't the time. What they need to do is they actually need to take even more risk. They need to change the fabric of the next fight in a different position, and do something that Toronto are not going to expect. And that's exactly what they do here. So as soon as the fight is lost, we catch Nightmare pushing up main, chasing for a kill on someone. But they have more than one goal with this, because we've got Seeker here. And Seeker, if you've been following him for the longest of times, you will know that this is his bread and butter. This is his textbook play. When the chips are down, when your team is in danger, Seeker is ready to take the risk and go for something psychotic. And this is that psychosis. So Seeker, he starts crouching towards the enemy team's spawn. He starts hiding in this room. This is not a traditional place to fight. You would expect the fights to take place on the point, but Seeker, he knows if that fight happens on the point, my team is going to lose. He goes for a really high risk play. He hides in the spawn. The team play on it is perfect. We saw a ping thrown down to denote where Seeker was going to hide before. Now we've got Infected up playing in main. He's peeking all of Toronto. He's poking all of Toronto. This is doing 2 things. For one, it's providing some scouting. It's telling Nightmare exactly where Toronto are, and that's going to enable Seeker to actually swing with good timing. He can't see through walls, so he needs to be told when to pick. And second, it's actually drawing all of Toronto's attention to Infected. If all of the eyes of Toronto are facing this way, looking at the Orisa, thinking, shoot this Orisa, poke out this Orisa, then Seeker, he has more space to get away with murder. And he is about to get away with murder because the timing is called. He swings out from this choke, and he flash fans Merit. And this is perfect play from Nightmare. Really good play to the ult situation. I'm not just saying this because I'm their sponsored content creator. This is high quality Overwatch right here. Because Nightmare, they're down on the ults, so instead of playing the normal fight, instead of facing certain defeat on the objective, they change up the pace a little bit. They get that pre-fight pick that is so important, because now they have an actual chance to win this fight. They may still be down 3 ultimates to 1, but now they're up a player, and a player is, potentially worth more than just an ultimate. The job is not done yet though, because Toronto, this is a similarly insane team, and even though Nightmare have gone for this aggro play, somehow the remainder of Toronto, they flip all the way through to the objective. So 4 players have made it over to the point, they've snuck away into the night, and everyone from the side of Toronto has flipped over to the point. Nightmare still need to play very well to win this fight, because they're going to have to play into so many ults. We've seen the power of a Surge Rally combo, or, you've imagined the power of a Surge Blade combo as well. Zero didn't do the best job of actually illustrating it, but trust me, these are powerful combos. So Nightmare, they still need to play very well in order to win, and now we'll see that from CJ's perspective. After this outside fight, where Seeker swings, and you can see everyone takes a lot of risk, CJ flies up into the air, goes for a big set of torpedoes, but now it's time for them to flip around. And this is where I'd say, CJ, he's done a good job. Lots of members of Nightmare are pushing over to the right-hand side. We can see Zero has pushed over onto the right-hand side, Infected has pushed over to the right-hand side. But CJ, he's gone for a power position. He's gone and put himself somewhere where he can see everything in this fight. He has a good piece of cover. You can't see it right now, but he's actually going to stand on it, I think. He has a good piece of cover in the form of this pillar to his left, where he can get a good angle. Okay, no, it looks like he's not much of a rabbit. He's not good at jumping up on top of things, but his position is good nonetheless, because from where he is right now, he can pocket Seeker up on the high ground if required, and he can see everything in the fight. The difference between CJ and Vega's positions in this fight is Vega is playing on the objective on the low ground. You see this box here, you see this box here. These are positions where Vega can play and he can be incredibly safe. There will be almost no chance of Vega being pushed in these low ground positions. But the thing about Overwatch is that fortune, it favors the bold. And an aggressive angle like this, where CJ is on the high ground and can see everything, every cycle of torpedoes is going to hit everybody. He is going to charge his ult quickly. He is going to do max damage, and he is always going to be in a position to heal anybody that requires it. The opposite side of this is that CJ, he's going to be in a little bit of danger because he doesn't have a nice little room that he can kite into. He can't hide in a corner and do nothing for a bit. He needs to be so careful that he doesn't get picked by anyone up on the high ground. But the position that he's chosen to rotate into, where he stayed up on the high ground, he hasn't taken this brawl on the objective. He hasn't gone over to this side where he get a more narrow angle and you don't have a high ground pillar that you can stand on. He's wound up in the optimal position essentially. And you'll see it here now. As he starts peeking up on the high ground, Zero goes down because he gets caught up in that very dangerous combo. That's the rally surge coming out from Toronto, and they do secure a kill with it, as you can see. But look at this now. Zero, he's on the high ground and his torpedoes, they see everything. He's healing all of his teammates with the torpedoes. He's pocketing Seeker through any danger. He can kite back around the corner to safety, but he doesn't have these big periods of downtime. And every time the torpedoes come online, he's going to see it all. The same cannot be said for Vega. If Vega pops his torpedoes underneath from this safe space, all he can see is what's right in front of him. He's not going to hit these players up on the high ground. So really, CJ, his position is better than what Vega has. A part of it is a product, the fact that Toronto, they had to retake from the low ground. But at no point do we see Toronto try and flip back out onto the top. They're stuck in this corner from start to finish. And that means that eventually CJ, he builds up the orbital ray faster than Vega. And that's the difference maker. We're in, I believe it's a 4 versus 4 on the objective right now. But because CJ gets that faster tempo ray, because he had that better position on the high ground, he was doing that little bit more. Now we're able to see Toronto Defiant, they just can't hold on. Nightmare, they clean up on the objective inside the ray. Vega, he's 99% by the time his team is dying, and it's just over. So this is really solid stuff from Nightmare, and you can see that it's not just one player performing well, it's the whole squad. Everybody is doing something good in one of these fights to make it work. And the thing about these matchups is that, as much as they can be dictated by one shot caller that really understands the situation, in order for you to make these fast judgments, you need to all be firing on all cylinders. CJ, no one's going to tell him where to play. He's going to have to naturally wind up in a position that's good for him. Seeker, he's not going to be able to sneak into a flank and get a pick because someone else told him to do it. You need to move fast to wind up in these positions between fights. Admiral, he can't just be told to get the bash. He actually needs to get it done. He needs to close that gap and not telegraph it, not make it obvious. We'll watch something from Zero as well, just so that the poor lad doesn't feel left out in the glazing session. Same goes for Infected in the first fight. You think Infected needed to be told by someone else that you should play a position where you can see everything and shoot everything? It appears that he missed the memo on that one and wound up on the objective instead. But again, everyone on the side of Nightmare is performing very, very well here. Now, we'll look over at the final fight of the map instead, because this is again where we get to see a good element of the team play, but also something individual from one of the players. So now we're up, it's 2-2 on Flashpoint. It's a barn burner of a map. It's really, really close. But look at this, 65-52. And you've got to keep your eyes on these numbers because these are very significant numbers. What happens? It's especially important at the end of maps, at the end of points. If you're a team that's in control and the objective goes up to 99 and you're about to queue overtime, you unlock this new potential to fight off the objective, to fight forward. Because if you fight forward, if you go and fight away from the point, you guarantee your team a 5 versus 4. The reason for this is if Nightmare allow Toronto to cap the point when the overtime wick starts, Toronto have to touch point. If they don't touch the point, the map is over. They will lose the game. Nightmare, they can go and fight off objective. They can take a 5 versus 4, 5 versus 3, whatever it may be. And somebody from the side of Toronto is anchored to the objective. They have no choice but to come to the objective. And here we'll see a little bit of that from Nightmare, where they're capable of identifying that situation and just pushing a lot deeper than you might expect for one of these points. Instead of taking the slow neutral on point, much like what we saw on the first Flashpoint, we're going to see it here again at the end, where they recognize that they have a condition that allows them to fight elsewhere, and they're going to do it perfectly. So right now, Nightmare, they're just playing on the point. They're just charging up a couple of their ultimates. They're getting the Surge, the Rally, and the Blade online. Toronto, their win condition, it's all through playing slow right now. The only way that Toronto can really win this fight and win this situation is if they just poke real slow. They charge up the Terror Surge, they charge up the Rally, and then they will have an equal situation. Then there will be 3 ults on either side. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Nightmare, though, if they fight quickly, they get they basically get to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. They get to capitalize on the fact that they have this ultimate lead right this second, but also they can capitalize on the objective pressure that I just discussed, where, again, Toronto have to touch because it's about to be 99. It's about to be overtime. And you'll see it here. Nightmare, they play slow, they poke for a little bit, but now they know enemy team is playing slow. Enemy team is trying to charge something. Enemy team also has to touch point. In less than 10 seconds, the enemy must be glued to the objective. So let's push main and fight them out in main. Because if they back up, they will lose. So now, Zero, he's muscling forward. Infected is spinning forward again, looking for his surge opportunity. Admiral is bashing forward, going for the rally. And now you might be thinking, why is Nightmare fighting so deep? Usually, teams push out like this, they're opening themselves up for failure. They're opening themselves up because they commit so many cooldowns to push. You know, Admiral, he had to use bash to get forward. Infected had to use spin and fortify to get forward. Seeker probably had to roll. CJ's used Ray. So many cooldowns invested from Nightmare, but in this situation, it's good because Sugar Free can't be involved in the fight. Sugar Free is stuck on the objective, and right now that's Toronto's only ultimate. So Nightmare, they push outside, Zero goes for the blade, and he's put himself in a position where he can just chop through everybody. You can see Sugar Free, he flips that cap. But it does not matter one bit because Nightmare knew Sugar Free was not going to be able to take the fight. He wasn't going to be able to leave the objective. Nightmare have guaranteed themselves a 5 versus 4 outside, and they guaranteed themselves easy ultimates as a result. So Toronto, they flip that cap, but it doesn't matter one bit because now Nightmare, they clean up the kills, they come back to the objective, and there's just no hope for the side of Toronto anymore. Not possible for Sugar Free to 2v5 blade clutch this one out. Nightmare, they flip the point back in their favor. And now it's just stagger for the side of Toronto Defiant. It's just stalling onto the point. But we're not going to see a victory screen here for Toronto. It's all over. It's done and dusted. And it was essentially plays like this. It was understanding of the macro, understanding of the ult situations, understanding the objective pressure that allowed Nightmare to go so far versus the Toronto Defiant. Toronto is a team that is so solid. They're undisputed best team in North America. But you can see in metas like this, the gap, it really shrinks. You can see that teams like Nightmare, with players that understand the push and pull of ground tank matchups, they're able to go so close with Toronto Defiant. They're able to go toe to toe and win. They get to map 7. And this is really, it's a highlight for a lot of the players on Nightmare. It's also a highlight for some of the weaknesses of Toronto, because you can see when they're not able to play their ideal compositions. When RuPaul, for example, a carry player on Ana, is taken off Ana, taken off Baptiste or Kiriko, and put onto something where he's a little bit less comfortable, the cracks start to show. Same goes for someone who traditionally doesn't have the best ground tanks. We've seen someone, when his team is in a position of needing to play, well, we'll talk about last year's Overwatch League playoffs. In Overwatch League playoffs, he won the league, but not by playing the meta tank, which was Orisa. He won by counter-swapping Orisa and playing Rhine and Sigma. So he's someone that perhaps in Orisa metas, he struggles a little bit. RuPaul, again, insane flex support player, but he doesn't have that same carry potential on the Brigida that he does on a hero like Ana, where he is probably just the undisputed best in the West.